little bit at the end of the last lecture. The fact that it didn't start off being called the Super Bowl, it was called the AFL NFL Championship Game, or World Championship Game, I think is super wordy. And so it was actually the third of those championship games that were played. That was the first to be called Super Bowl. It's a little bit confusing, but I feel like it's more wordy than it is confusing. But it was Lamar Hunt, like we mentioned before, who came up with that idea of calling it Super Bowl, thinking that, again, that AFL, NFL World Championship Game was a lot of words, and they wanted to make it something, that was more conducive to what the college was using, like the Rose Bowl, the Sugar Bowl, things of that sort. So it was called the Super Bowl at that point. And this was the third championship game. This was played between, at the time, the Baltimore Colts, who were from the NFL, and the New York Jets, who are from the AFL. It's the last time, it's the first time that the AFL team defeated the NFL team. The first two Super Bowls played between Green Bay and Kansas City, and then Green Bay and Oakland were both won by Green Bay, and quite convincingly. And so, the narrative was that the NFL was far superior than the teams in the AFL, that, they would win the Super Bowl hands down. I think the Colts were like double digit favorites, like 15 or 16 points or something. But the Colts had Joe Namath, who was the famous quarterback who was drafted by the AFL, and how important that was. So again, the AFL was seen to be an inferior league. The AFL had yet to beat the NFL in a championship game. They didn't play in the regular season. There was no cross scheduling. It was just the AFL played the AFL teams, the NFL played the NFL teams, and then they would play in the Super Bowl, the champions with it. Now that's going to change when we talk about the merger. We talk about that a little bit as well. And then Joe Namath, who was New York's quarterback, made the famous guarantee that the Jets were going to win the game like a day before the game was being played. So there was a lot of hype to this game. And again, it was pretty significant for two reasons. Number one, it's the first time that the AFL defeated the NFL. And number two, was the first time it was actually referred to as the Super Bowl, even though it's technically Super Bowl III was the first time the word Super Bowl was used. So a relatively low scoring game. Jets defeated the Colts 16-7. As I mentioned, first time the AFL team had won it. The AFC actually would go on, or the AFC in 1970, right, would go on to win 8 out of the next 10 Super Bowls. So all that narrative talk about the NFL teams being better is obviously not true, because from 1969 until the late 70s, the AFL dominated, the AFC technically dominated the Super Bowls, with Pittsburgh winning, Miami winning a couple, Oakland won, the Raiders. I think the only NFC teams to win was Dallas, and I think that might be it. Philadelphia, maybe? I don't remember. But anyways, so you had there's the Oakland beating Minnesota. There's the Pittsburgh, Dallas Super Bowl in 76, I believe. And then Miami won back-to-back Super Bowls in 1972 and 73. I think Dallas won it in 71. But yeah, so I mean, the AFC dominated the Super Bowl throughout the 1970s. I'm not going to watch this, obviously. This is not on your lecture outline. You might want to take a picture of your screen here. This is Al Davis. It got omitted, obviously, from your lecture outline, but Al Davis was an innovator in the AFL originally, and then also was pretty prominent as an NFL owner. He owned the Oakland Raiders, and his son still owns the Las Vegas Raiders today. But he drafted the first African-American quarterback in the first round. He also was the first to hire a minority head coach, Tom Flores, who was Latino. And they actually won the Super Bowl with him being the coach in 1980. And he was the first African-American head coach was hired as well, Art Shell. So, obviously a very progressive thinker for those times. You're talking about this is the late 60s, early 70s, into the 80s. And so, Al Davis thought differently than others. He also drafted African-American players more frequently than others did. Pittsburgh was another team that drafted a lot of African-American players. Hopefully my voice holds out here. Al Davis also was the only person to serve in 6 different capacities on an NFL team. He was a player personnel assistant for the Chargers in the old AFL. He was also an assistant coach there as well. He was a league commissioner of the AFL. So like Pete Rozelle was the commissioner of the NFL, Al Davis was a commissioner of the AFL before they merged. He also was the head coach of the Oakland Raiders, the team that he also owned. And like I said, he was a general manager there and also obviously the owner. So he was the only person, to this day, the same thing, only person in the NFL that's ever been in those multiple positions over the course of about, he had to be 35 plus years in the NFL from the time he started to when he finally retired in the, I want to say the mid 90s, somewhere in there.